They sold the poor seamstress for a coin until the Alpha King recognized his mark on her skin. The marketplace stank of rot and desperation. Elena pressed herself against the cold stone wall of the auction platform, her thin cotton dress doing little to shield her from the November chill that swept through the open square. Around her, dozens of other women and men stood in chains, their eyes hollow, their spirits broken. She tried to keep her breathing steady, tried to ignore the way the iron shackles bit into her wrists, leaving angry red marks on her pale skin. She hadn't eaten in 2 days. The traders had given them nothing but stale bread and murky water since they'd been captured from the textile factory where she'd worked as a seamstress. That felt like a lifetime ago now, though it had only been 5 days. 5 days since the factory owner had sold them all to cover his gambling debts. 5 days since Elena's modest but peaceful life had shattered into 1,000 irreparable pieces. The auctioneer, a portly man with a thin mustache and cruel eyes, grabbed her arm roughly and dragged her forward onto the raised platform. The crowd below pressed closer, their faces a blur of curiosity and calculated interest. Elena's legs trembled beneath her, but she forced herself to stand straight. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, please subscribe and leave a comment telling me where you're from. It helps me bring you more stories like this one. Here we have a young seamstress, the auctioneer announced, his voice carrying across the square. 23 years old, healthy, knows her way around a needle and thread. Good for domestic work, textile production, whatever you need. He grabbed her chin, forcing her face toward the crowd. Elena jerked away, earning a sharp slap across her cheek that made her ears ring. The bidding started low, pathetically low. 1 silver coin, someone called from the back. Elena's heart sank. 1 coin. That's what her life was worth to these people. 1 coin. 2 silver coins, another voice offered, bored and disinterested. The auctioneer looked annoyed. Come now, gentlemen, ladies, look at those hands, skilled hands. She can work. 3 coins, surely. Silence. Elena closed her eyes, fighting back tears. This was how it ended then, sold for pocket change to whoever wanted to exploit what little remained of her dignity. She thought of her mother, dead these past 6 years. At least her mother didn't have to see this. At least she'd been spared that particular heartbreak. 3 coins going once, the auctioneer droned. Then the crowd shifted, a ripple of movement, people stepping back, making way. Elena opened her eyes to see what was causing the commotion, and her breath caught in her throat. A man strode through the marketplace, and everything about him commanded attention. He stood well over 6 feet tall, broad-shouldered and powerfully built, moving with the fluid grace of someone who knew exactly how dangerous he was. His dark hair was pulled back from a face that could have been carved from granite, all sharp angles and uncompromising lines. But it was his eyes that held her frozen. Pale grey, almost silver in the fading afternoon light, and focused directly on her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. He wore expensive clothes, a long black coat over a dark shirt and trousers, but there was nothing soft about him. This was a man who'd seen violence, had dealt it out with his own hands. Scars traced along his jaw and disappeared beneath his collar. And yet, as he approached the platform, every person in that marketplace seemed to shrink away from him with something that looked like reverence or fear, maybe both. The bidding is at 3 coins, the auctioneer said, his voice suddenly uncertain. Do you wish to? 50 gold coins, the man said. His voice was deep, commanding, with an accent Elena couldn't quite place. Not from this part of the country, certainly. The marketplace went silent. 50 gold coins was more money than most people in this town would see in 5 years. The auctioneer's eyes widened. 50 gold coins? Sir, Is that a problem? Those silver eyes never left Elena's face. No problem at all, sir. We don't usually... The auctioneer stumbled over his words. "Sold to the gentleman for 50 gold coins." The man climbed the steps to the platform with measured strides. Up close, Eleanor could see he was even more imposing than she'd thought. He towered over her, making her feel small and fragile. But strangely, she didn't feel afraid. There was something in his expression as he looked at her, something almost like recognition. Though she was certain she'd never seen him before, she would have remembered someone like him. He pulled out a set of keys and unlocked her shackles himself, his movements surprisingly gentle. When the iron fell away, Eleanor rubbed her raw wrists, wincing. The man caught her hand, turning it over to examine the marks. His jaw tightened. "Who did this?" he asked quietly, but there was steel beneath the words. "The traders," Elena said, her voice hoarse from disuse. "They—" He released her hand and turned to the auctioneer. "The men who brought these people here, where are they?" The auctioneer pointed nervously to a group of rough-looking men counting coins near the edge of the square. The stranger's expression darkened. He shrugged out of his coat and draped it over Elena's shoulders before walking toward the traders with purposeful strides. What happened next unfolded so quickly, Elena almost missed it. The stranger grabbed the largest of the traders by the throat and slammed him against a wooden post with enough force to crack the timber. The other traders reached for weapons, but the stranger moved like lightning, disarming them and leaving all three men groaning on the ground in less than 30 seconds. "If I see any of you in this territory again," the stranger said, his voice carrying across the now silent square, "I'll do worse than break your arms. Are we clear?" The traders nodded frantically, scrambling away as soon as he released them. The stranger watched them go, then returned to Elena as if nothing had happened. He retrieved his coat from her shoulders and studied her face with those unsettling silver eyes. "What's your name?" he asked. "Elena Morrison. My name is Marcus Cade. You'll come with me now." It wasn't a question, but Elena found herself nodding anyway. What choice did she have? At least this man had stopped the traders from hurting anyone else. At least he'd paid enough to free her, rather than leaving her to rot in some factory or worse. Marcus led her to a sleek black car parked at the edge of the marketplace, so out of place among the horses and carts that Elena stared at it. He opened the passenger door for her, waiting patiently until she climbed inside. The interior smelled of leather and something else, something wild and unfamiliar that made her pulse quicken. They drove in silence through the winding streets of the town, heading north toward the hills that overlooked the valley. Elena watched the buildings thin out, replaced by dense forest that seemed to stretch endlessly in every direction. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, and she realized with a start that she had no idea where they were going or what this man wanted with her. "Where are we going?" she finally asked, her voice small in the comfortable quiet of the car. "My estate," Marcus replied. "It's about 20 minutes from here. And what? What do you want from me?" He glanced at her, something flickering in those grey eyes. "I need to see something first. Then we'll talk." That wasn't an answer, but Elena sensed pushing wouldn't get her anywhere. Instead, she pulled his coat tighter around herself and watched the forest blur past the windows. Despite everything, despite the terror of the day and the uncertainty of what came next, she felt strangely calm. Maybe it was shock, maybe it was exhaustion, or maybe it was something about Marcus Cade himself. The way he'd looked at her like she was something precious rather than something purchased. The estate appeared suddenly through a break in the trees, and Eleanor's breath caught. It wasn't a house so much as a compound. A sprawling stone mansion surrounded by smaller buildings, all of it enclosed by a high stone wall. Security cameras perched on every corner, and she spotted at least 6 guards patrolling the perimeter. This wasn't just wealth. This was power. Marcus pulled the car into a massive garage filled with other expensive vehicles. He came around to open her door, offering his hand to help her out. Elena took it, feeling the calluses on his palm, the strength in his grip. Whatever he was no stranger to hard work, despite the obvious wealth. He led her through a side entrance into the mansion itself. The interior took her breath away. Vaulted ceilings, rich wood paneling, expensive art on every wall. But there was also something wild about it, something untamed. Fur throws draped over leather furniture, weapons mounted on displays, large windows that let in the fading light but no curtains to block it. A woman appeared from a side hallway, older, maybe 50, with kind eyes and greying hair pulled into a neat bun. She took one look at Elena's thin frame and pale face and immediately tisked with concern. "Marcus, what have you brought home now?" But there was no reproach in her voice, only warmth. "This is Elena," Marcus said. "She needs food, medical attention, and proper clothes. Can you help her?" "Of course," the woman smiled at Elena. "I'm Margaret. I manage the household. Come with me, dear. Let's get you taken care of." Elena looked at Marcus uncertainly. He nodded. "Go with Margaret. She'll make sure you're comfortable. I'll come find you in a little while." Margaret led Elena up a grand staircase to the second floor, chattering pleasantly about nothing in particular, clearly trying to put her at ease. They ended up in a bathroom that was larger than Eleanor's entire apartment had been, with a massive tub already being filled with steaming water by Margaret. "You take your time in there," Margaret said gently. "I'll bring you some clothes and something to eat. Don't worry about anything right now, okay? Just rest." Eleanor nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. Margaret left, closing the door softly behind her, and Eleanor stood alone in the steam-filled room, trying to process everything that had happened. This morning, she'd been standing in chains in a filthy marketplace worth 3 silver coins. Now she was in a mansion that probably cost more than her entire hometown, about to take a bath in what looked like a small pool. She undressed slowly, wincing at the bruises covering her body from the trader's rough handling. As she caught sight of herself in the mirror, she froze. There, just below her left collarbone, was a mark she'd had since birth. Shaped like a crescent moon, it had always been faint, barely visible except in certain light. But now, in the bathroom's bright illumination, it seemed darker somehow, more distinct. Elena traced it with her finger, wondering why she was thinking about it now. She'd never paid it much attention before, just a birthmark, her mother had said, nothing special. She slipped into the bath, groaning as the hot water enveloped her aching muscles. For the first time in days, she felt something close to safe. She didn't know what Marcus Cade wanted from her, didn't know what came next, but at least in this moment she was warm and clean and not standing on an auction block. She stayed in the bath until the water started to cool, washing away days of grime and fear. When she finally emerged, she found soft pajamas laid out on the counter, along with bandages and antiseptic for her wounds. She dressed carefully, treating the worst of the cuts and bruises, then ventured back into the bedroom. A tray of food waited on a small table by the window. Simple fare: soup, bread, cheese, fruit, but it looked like a feast to Elena. She ate slowly, forcing herself not to make herself sick, though her stomach cramped with hunger. Through the window, she could see the grounds of the estate stretching into the forest beyond. Lights dotted the perimeter, and she caught glimpses of more guards making their rounds. What kind of man needed this much security? A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called, setting down her spoon. Marcus entered, and in the warm light of the bedroom, Elena got her first real look at him without the chaos of the marketplace. He'd changed clothes, now wearing simple dark jeans and a grey sweater that somehow made him look even more imposing. His dark hair was still damp, suggesting he'd showered as well, and those silver eyes were as intense as ever. "How are you feeling?" he asked, staying near the door as if afraid to crowd her. "Better. Thank you for all of this." Elena gestured vaguely at the room, the food, the clothes. "I don't understand why you're helping me, but thank you." Marcus was quiet for a moment, studying her with that unnerving focus. "Elena, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Do you have any birthmarks? Anything unusual on your skin?" The question caught her off guard. Yes, a mark on my chest, shaped like a crescent moon." "Why?" Something flickered across Marcus's face. Relief? Recognition? "May I see it?" Elena's hand went protectively to her collarbone. "I'm not going to hurt you," Marcus said quietly, "but I need to see this mark. It's important, more important than you can possibly understand right now." There was something in his voice, something almost desperate beneath the commanding exterior. Against her better judgment, Elena found herself trusting him. Slowly, she pulled aside the collar of her pajama top, revealing the crescent moon mark. Marcus crossed the room in 3 strides, kneeling beside her chair to get a better look. His hand hovered over the mark, but didn't touch her skin. His eyes widened, and Elena saw his jaw clench. "After all these years," he whispered, "I've been searching for so long, and here you are." "What are you talking about?" Elena's voice shook. "What does this mark mean?" Marcus sat back on his heels, running a hand through his hair. When he looked at her again, his eyes held an emotion Elena couldn't name. "That mark means you're my mate, my destined partner. And I've been looking for you for almost a decade." Elena stared at him, certain she'd misheard. "Your mate? What does that even mean? I know this sounds insane." Marcus interrupted. "I know you don't know me, don't know anything about what I am. But that mark, Elena, it's a mate mark. It means we're connected, bonded. And when I saw you on that platform, I felt it. The pull, the recognition. I knew before I even saw the mark that you were mine." "I'm not anyone's," Elena said, her voice harder than she'd intended. "I just escaped being sold like property. I'm not about to—" "That's not what I meant." Marcus held up his hands placatingly. "You're not property. You're not something to be owned. But you are connected to me in a way that's difficult to explain." "Then try," Elena challenged, "because right now this sounds like the ramblings of someone who needs professional help." A slight smile tugged at Marcus's lips despite the tension in the room. "You're stronger than you look." "I've had to be." Marcus nodded slowly, then stood and walked to the window. His broad shoulders were tense, his hands clenched at his sides. "What do you know about the territories north of here, about the families that control them?" "Not much," Eleanor admitted. "The factory owner used to complain about permits and regulations, but I never paid attention. I was just trying to keep my job." "The northern territories are controlled by people like me," Marcus said. "People who are different. Stronger, faster, more dangerous. We've been here for centuries, hiding in plain sight, maintaining the balance between our world and yours." Elena's stomach twisted with unease. "What are you saying? That you're some kind of, superhuman?" "Not human at all," Marcus said quietly, turning to face her. "Elena, I'm what your world would call a werewolf, an alpha werewolf. And I lead one of the largest packs in North America." The room seemed to tilt. Eleanor gripped the arms of her chair, trying to process what he'd just said. Werewolves. He was claiming to be a werewolf. This was insane. She should run. She should scream for help. But something in his eyes, something in the way he stood there waiting for her reaction, told her he was telling the truth. "That's impossible," she whispered. "I can prove it," Marcus offered, "but not tonight. You've been through enough today. What I need you to understand right now is that mark on your skin. It appeared the day you were born, the same day a mark appeared on me." He pulled aside his collar, revealing a matching crescent moon on his chest, just above his heart. This mark means we're meant to be together. Fated mates, bonded by forces older than either of us. Elena stared at the mark on his skin, identical to her own. Her mind raced, trying to find a rational explanation and coming up empty. So what does this mean? What happens now? Now you rest, Marcus said firmly. You're safe here. No one will hurt you. No one will force you to do anything you don't want to do. Tomorrow, when you're stronger, we'll talk more. I'll answer all your questions, but tonight, you need to sleep. He moved toward the door, but Elena's voice stopped him. Marcus, why were you at that marketplace? Were you looking for me? He turned back, shadows playing across his face. I've been searching every town within 200 miles for the past 5 years, following rumors, checking slave auctions, anywhere someone might have ended up who didn't know what they were or where they belonged. I'd almost given up hope of finding you. His voice roughened. When I saw you on that platform, when I felt the bond snap into place, I would have paid any price to get you out of there. 50 gold coins, Elena murmured. I would have paid 50,000, Marcus said simply. You're worth more than any amount of money, Elena Morrison. Even if you never accept the bond, even if you choose to leave here and never see me again, you're worth more than the whole world to me. With that, he left, closing the door softly behind him. Elena sat in the quiet room, her mind spinning. Werewolves, fated mates, destiny. It was too much, too impossible. And yet, as she touched the mark on her chest, she felt something. A warmth, a pull toward the man who'd just left, like a thread connecting them that she couldn't see but could definitely feel. She climbed into the massive bed, sinking into pillows that felt like clouds after weeks of sleeping on hard factory floors and then cold stone cells. Despite everything, despite the insanity of the day, exhaustion pulled her under almost immediately. Her dreams were strange, running through forests under moonlight, silver eyes watching her from the shadows, a sense of belonging she'd never felt in her waking life, and underneath it all, a melody, like a song she'd forgotten but was slowly beginning to remember. Eleanor woke to sunlight streaming through gauzy curtains and the smell of coffee wafting from somewhere downstairs. For a moment, she forgot where she was, reaching instinctively for the thin blanket she'd had in her apartment. Her hand found soft cotton sheets instead, and reality came flooding back. The mansion, Marcus, the impossible claim about werewolves and destiny. She sat up slowly, taking in the room properly for the first time. It was beautiful, decorated in warm earth tones with heavy wooden furniture that looked both expensive and comfortable. Fresh clothes had been laid out on a chair by the door. Jeans, a soft sweater, undergarments in what appeared to be her exact size. Someone had paid attention to detail. Elena dressed quickly, then ventured into the hallway. The mansion was even more impressive in daylight. Huge windows let in streams of golden morning light, illuminating paintings and tapestries that looked centuries old. She followed the smell of coffee down the grand staircase and through a maze of hallways until she found a massive kitchen where Margaret was cooking breakfast. "Good morning, dear," Margaret beamed at her. "How did you sleep?" "Better than I have in weeks," Eleanor admitted. "Thank you for everything last night." "Oh, nonsense. It's my job, and besides, it's nice to have another woman in the house. It's been nothing but testosterone and posturing around here for far too long." Margaret poured her a cup of coffee, adding cream and sugar without asking. Somehow, she got the proportions exactly right. "Hungry? I'm making eggs and bacon. Starving, actually." Margaret loaded a plate with food and gestured for Elena to sit at the large kitchen table. "Marcus left early this morning. Pack business. But he said to tell you he'll be back by noon, and he wants to talk to you then." "Pack business," Elena repeated slowly. "So it's really true. The werewolf thing." Margaret's expression softened. He told you then. That's good. I know it's a lot to take in, especially for someone who's been living in the human world. But yes, dear, it's all true. Marcus is the alpha of the Silver Moon Pack, has been for 12 years, since his father died. Elena set down her fork, her appetite suddenly gone. And this mate thing, is that true too? That's absolutely true, Margaret confirmed. I've been with this pack for 30 years. I've seen 3 alpha pairs find each other, and every time it's like watching 2 halves of a whole finally come together. The bond between true mates is sacred, unbreakable. What if I don't want to be mated to someone I just met? Elena asked quietly. Margaret reached over and patted her hand gently. Then you have the right to reject the bond. It's your choice, Elena, always your choice. Marcus knows that. He won't force you into anything. She paused, studying Elena's face. But I'll tell you this, I've known Marcus since he was a boy. He's a good man, strong, fair, protective of his people. The fact that he found you, that he got you out of that terrible situation, that's not coincidence. That's fate. Elena wanted to argue, wanted to rail against the idea that her life was predetermined by some cosmic force she didn't understand. But the mark on her chest tingled, and she remembered the way Marcus had looked at her, like she was precious, like she mattered. "Can I ask you something?" Elena said. "Why hasn't he been with anyone else? He said he's been looking for me for 5 years, but he's what? In his 30s. Why wait?" "Because once you know your mate is out there, no one else will do," Margaret said simply. "It would be like trying to fill a specific hole with the wrong-shaped piece. It just doesn't work. Marcus has been alone all these years because he's been waiting for you." The weight of that settled over Elena like a blanket. 12 years he'd led his pack alone. 5 years actively searching for her. All that time, all that loneliness, because of a mark they'd both been born with. She finished her breakfast in thoughtful silence, then asked Margaret if there was somewhere she could go to think. Margaret directed her to a library on the 2nd floor, and Elena spent the morning surrounded by books, trying to make sense of her new reality. The library was enormous, with floor-to-ceiling shelves filled with leather-bound volumes. Some looked ancient, with titles in languages Elena didn't recognize. Others were modern, covering everything from philosophy to science to fiction. She found herself drawn to a section on mythology and folklore, pulling down a thick book on werewolf legends. Most of it was nonsense, she quickly realized. Silver bullets and full moons and mindless beasts. But there were threads of truth woven through the myths, references to packs, to alphas, to the sacred bond between mates. She was so absorbed in her reading that she didn't hear footsteps approaching until a throat cleared behind her. Elena spun around to find a young woman standing in the doorway, maybe a year or 2 older than herself, with striking red hair and amber eyes. She wore jeans and a leather jacket, and she radiated the same kind of controlled power that Marcus did. "So you're the one," the woman said, not unkindly. "The lost mate everyone's been buzzing about." "I'm Elena," she said carefully. "And you are?" "Cassandra, Cass. I'm Marcus's second-in-command." She crossed the room and offered her hand. Elena shook it, noting the firm grip. "Welcome to the pack, I guess, though I hear you haven't decided if you're staying yet." "Is everyone going to know my business?" Elena asked, more tired than annoyed. Cass laughed. "It's a pack. We're all in each other's business constantly. You'll get used to it, or you'll hate it and leave. Either way." She studied Elena critically. "You don't look like much, but Marcus seems pretty convinced you're special." "I'm a seamstress who was sold at a slave auction," Elena said flatly. "I'm not special. I'm just unlucky. Or incredibly lucky, depending on how you look at it," Cass countered. "You could have ended up with some human trafficker or in a sweatshop. Instead, you're here, with an alpha who's been losing his mind trying to find you, in a house with more security than Fort Knox. Seems pretty lucky to me. Eleanor couldn't argue with that logic, so she didn't try. What happens if I reject the bond? What happens to Marcus? Cass's expression sobered. It would hurt him badly. When a mate bond is rejected, it's like having part of your soul ripped away. He'd survive, but he'd never be the same. And the pack would suffer for it too. An alpha with a rejected mate bond becomes unstable, dangerous. So I don't really have a choice, Elena said bitterly. Accept the bond or be responsible for destroying him and everyone who depends on him. You always have a choice, Cass said firmly, but choices have consequences. That's true for everything in life, not just mate bonds. She moved to the window, looking out over the estate grounds. Look, I get it. This is overwhelming. A week ago, you didn't even know werewolves existed, and now you're being told you're destined to be with one. It's insane. But give it a chance. Give him a chance. You might be surprised. Before Elena could respond, Marcus's voice echoed through the hallway. Cass, is she in the library? Yeah, boss, and I didn't traumatize her too badly, I promise. Marcus appeared in the doorway, and Eleanor's breath caught. In the morning light streaming through the library windows, he looked almost ethereal. The silver in his eyes seemed to glow, and there was something magnetic about him. Something that made her want to move closer, even as her rational mind screamed at her to keep her distance. Can I steal her for a bit? Marcus asked Cass, though his eyes never left Elena. There's something I want to show her. She's all yours, Cass said with a knowing smile. Try not to scare her off on the first day, yeah? Marcus ignored the comment, walking over to Elena and offering his hand. Come with me, please. Elena hesitated for only a moment before placing her hand in his. The contact sent a jolt through her, like electricity arcing between them. Marcus's fingers tightened around hers, and she saw his jaw clench. He felt it too. He led her through the mansion and out a back door onto a stone patio that overlooked the forest. The view was breathtaking. Pine trees stretched as far as Elena could see, their branches heavy with snow from an early storm. Mountains rose in the distance, purple and majestic against the clear blue sky. This territory has been held by my family for 300 years, Marcus said quietly. 40,000 acres of protected land. My pack number's about 200, spread throughout these woods. We've built a life here that balances both sides of our nature, the human and the wolf. Why are you telling me this? Eleanor asked. Because if you accept the bond, this will be your home, your territory, your pack. He turned to face her fully. I want you to understand what you'd be stepping into. I'm not just asking you to be with me. I'm asking you to be Luna, the alpha's mate, the pack mother. It's a position of power and responsibility, of leadership. I can't lead anyone, Eleanor protested. I'm nobody. I was a seamstress in a factory, Marcus. I have no training, no skills for something like that. You have more strength than you realize, Marcus said. I saw it yesterday. The way you held yourself together on that auction platform. The way you're holding yourself together now, despite everything that's been thrown at you. That's the kind of strength a Luna needs. Elena pulled her hand free, wrapping her arms around herself. You don't know me. This mark, this bond, it's based on nothing. We're strangers. Then let's change that, Marcus said simply. Spend time with me. Get to know me. Let me get to know you. No pressure, no expectations. Just give this a chance. And if I decide I can't do this, if I want to leave... Pain flashed across Marcus's face, but he schooled his features quickly. Then I'll drive you anywhere you want to go. I'll give you money to start over. Make sure you have everything you need. You're not a prisoner here. Elena, you never will be. She studied him, searching for any hint of deception, but all she saw was sincerity. And something else. Loneliness. This powerful man who commanded hundreds of people was lonely. Okay, she said finally. "I'll stay, for now. I'll get to know you and we'll see what happens." The relief that washed over Marcus's face was almost painful to witness. "Thank you," he said, and his voice was rough with emotion. "I promise you won't regret it." Over the next few weeks, Marcus was true to his word. He made no demands, pushed for nothing beyond friendship. Instead, he showed Elena his world piece by piece, letting her adjust to the impossible reality of werewolves and packs and ancient traditions. He introduced her to pack members, dozens of people who lived on the territory or nearby. They were welcoming, treating her with a respect that bewildered her until she realized they already saw her as their future Luna. Some were born wolves, children playing in the woods who could shift between human and animal form as easily as breathing. Others were turned wolves, people who'd been bitten and survived the transformation, finding a new family among the pack. Margaret taught her about pack dynamics, the intricate social structures that governed werewolf society. Cass took her running through the forest, teaching her the territory boundaries and safe paths. Even the guards, stoic men and women who patrolled the compound, nodded to her respectfully when she passed. And Marcus. Marcus was patient in a way Elena hadn't expected. He spent hours with her, talking about his life, his responsibilities, his dreams for the pack's future. He taught her about werewolf history, about the wars they'd fought to maintain their secrecy, about the uneasy peace with human governments who knew they existed, but chose to look the other way. In return, Elena told him about her life, about growing up poor, her mother working 3 jobs to keep them fed, about discovering her talent with a needle and thread, the way fabric and patterns made sense to her in a way nothing else did, about her mother's death from cancer, how Elena had been alone ever since, just trying to survive in a world that didn't care if she existed or not. "You're not alone anymore," Marcus told her one evening as they sat by the library fireplace. "You'll never be alone again, I promise you that." And slowly, carefully, Elena began to believe him. She also began to notice things about Marcus that had nothing to do with the mate bond. The way he listened intently when anyone spoke to him, giving them his full attention. The way he checked on every pack member who was sick or injured, remembering details about their families and lives. The way he laughed at Cass's terrible jokes. How he helped Margaret in the kitchen, even though he clearly had no idea what he was doing. How he trained with the younger wolves every morning, pushing them to be better while never making them feel inadequate. He was a good man, a good alpha. And against all her expectations, Elena found herself falling for him. A month after arriving at the estate, Elena woke from another dream about running through the forest. These dreams had become more frequent, more vivid. In them, she was both herself and something else, something wild and free. She always woke with her heart pounding and the mark on her chest burning. She found Marcus in his office, working through a stack of paperwork. He looked up when she entered, a smile crossing his face. "Good morning. Couldn't sleep?" "I keep having these dreams," Elena said, settling into the chair across from his desk. "About running, about the forest. It feels so real." Marcus set down his pen, giving her his full attention. "That's the wolf. Your wolf. She's waking up." Elena's heart skipped. "I thought you said I was human, that I didn't know what I was." "You are human," Marcus confirmed. "But the mate mark doesn't just appear on anyone. It appears on those who have the potential to become pack. The mark is the wolf's way of claiming you, of saying this one is mine. Your wolf has been dormant your whole life, waiting for this moment. Now that you're here, now that you've found your mate, she's starting to emerge." "What does that mean?" Elena asked, equal parts excited and terrified. "It means you can learn to shift if you want to," Marcus said carefully. "It's not easy, and it's not without risks, but if you're willing to try, I can help you." Elena touched the mark on her chest, feeling it pulse with warmth. All her life, she'd felt like something was missing, like she was incomplete. Was this it? Was this the missing piece? "I want to try," she said, and Marcus's eyes lit up with an emotion that made her chest ache. Pride. He was proud of her. They started that night. Marcus took her deep into the forest, to a clearing lit by moonlight. The air was cold, their breath fogging in the darkness, but Elena barely noticed. Every nerve in her body was alive, thrumming with anticipation. "The first shift is the hardest," Marcus explained, standing close enough that she could feel his body heat. "It's going to hurt. A lot. Your body is changing on a fundamental level, reshaping itself, but I'll be here the whole time. If anything goes wrong, I'll help you." "What could go wrong?" Elena asked nervously. "Your wolf could refuse to emerge. You could get stuck between forms. You could shift and not be able to shift back." He cupped her face gently. "But I won't let any of that happen. I've helped dozens of people through their first shift. I'll help you too." Elena nodded, trying to project confidence she didn't feel. "What do I do?" "Close your eyes. Feel the mark. It's connected to your wolf, to that part of you that's been sleeping. Call to her. Tell her it's time to wake up." Elena closed her eyes and focused inward. At first, there was nothing but darkness and the sound of her own heartbeat. Then, slowly, she felt something stir, a presence that was both foreign and intimately familiar. Her wolf. Heat bloomed in her chest, spreading through her veins like liquid fire. Elena gasped, her eyes flying open. "Marcus!" "I'm here," he said, his hands on her shoulders, steady and grounding. "Don't fight it. Let it happen." The pain hit all at once, and Elena screamed. Her bones cracked and reformed, her spine arching impossibly. She fell to her knees in the snow, her fingers digging into the frozen ground as her hands began to change. Fur sprouted along her arms, her face elongated, teeth sharpening to fangs. Through it all, Marcus's voice was a constant anchor. "You're doing great. Just breathe. Let your wolf guide you." And then suddenly it was over. Elena stood on 4 legs instead of 2. The world transformed around her. Colors were different, muted except for blues and yellows. But scents, oh, the scents were incredible. She could smell everything, the pine trees, the snow, the small animals sheltering in their dens. And Marcus, standing beside her in his human form, smelling of earth and smoke and something uniquely him. She looked down at herself and saw white fur, pristine as fresh snow. Her paws were large, equipped with claws that gleamed in the moonlight. She was a wolf, an actual wolf. Marcus knelt beside her, running his hand through her fur. "You're beautiful," he whispered. "Absolutely beautiful." Elena wanted to respond, but all that came out was a soft whine. Marcus smiled, understanding anyway. "You'll learn to shift back in a minute, but first run with me. Let your wolf feel what it's like to be free." He stepped back and shifted, the transformation so quick and smooth it took Elena's breath away. One moment he was a man, the next a massive grey wolf, easily twice her size. His eyes still held that silver gleam, and when he looked at her, Elena felt the bond between them pull tight. Marcus took off running, and instinct drove Elena to follow. They raced through the forest, leaping over fallen logs and dodging between trees. The wind rushed through her fur, and Elena felt more alive than she ever had in her human form. This was freedom. This was what she'd been missing her entire life. They ran for what felt like hours, though it was probably only 30 minutes. Eventually, Marcus led her back to the clearing and shifted back to human form. Elena tried to follow, reaching for that part of herself that was human, and after a few false starts, she felt the change begin again. This shift was easier, less painful, though still uncomfortable. Within minutes, she was standing on 2 legs again, naked and shivering in the cold. Marcus immediately wrapped her in a blanket he'd brought, pulling her against his chest. "You did it," he murmured into her hair. "Your first shift, and you did it perfectly." Elena buried her face in his shoulder, overwhelmed by emotion. Joy, relief, wonder, and something else. Something stronger. The mate bond, which had been a quiet pull before, now roared through her like a wildfire. She could feel Marcus's heartbeat as if it were her own, could sense his emotions, his pride and happiness and love. Love. He loved her. Eleanor pulled back to look at him, seeing the truth written plainly in his eyes. "Marcus, I love you," he said simply. "I've loved you since the moment I saw you. I know it's fast. I know you might not feel the same way yet. But I need you to know. I love you. Elena Morrison, I love your strength and your kindness and the way you've adapted to this insane situation. I love your laugh and your stubbornness and the way you always try to help Margaret in the kitchen even though you can't cook to save your life. I love everything about you." Tears pricked Elena's eyes. "I love you too," she whispered. "I didn't want to. I tried so hard not to. But I do. I love you." Marcus kissed her then, and it was like coming home, like finding a piece of herself she hadn't known was missing. The bond between them flared bright and hot, solidifying into something unbreakable. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Marcus rested his forehead against hers. "Will you accept the bond? Will you be my mate, my Luna, my partner in all things?" "Yes," Elena said without hesitation. "Yes to all of it." The bond snapped into place completely, and Elena gasped at the intensity of it. She could feel Marcus now, really feel him, his emotions and thoughts brushing against her own. It was intimate in a way she'd never experienced, overwhelming and perfect all at once. They made it back to the mansion in a daze, barely able to keep their hands off each other. Margaret took one look at them and smiled knowingly, shooing away any pack members who tried to approach. "Let them have their night," she said firmly. "Everything else can wait until tomorrow." In Marcus's room they consummated the bond properly, and with each touch, each kiss, Elena felt herself falling deeper into this connection that had seemed so impossible just weeks ago. This was right. This was meant to be. All the pain and fear of the past month, all the struggles and doubts, they'd been worth it to arrive at this moment. Afterward, lying tangled together in Marcus's massive bed, Elena traced the mate mark on his chest. It was darker now, more prominent, and she knew hers looked the same. "What happens now?" she asked sleepily. "Now we have a bonding ceremony," Marcus said, running his fingers through her hair. "We make it official in front of the pack, and then we spend the rest of our lives together, building something beautiful." "That sounds perfect," Elena murmured, already drifting towards sleep. "Elena. Thank you for giving me a chance. Thank you for staying." She pressed a kiss to his chest, right over his heart. "Thank you for finding me. Thank you for bringing me home." Because that's what this was, she realized as sleep finally claimed her. Home. Not a place, but a person. A pack. A destiny she'd never known she was walking toward. The bonding ceremony took place 3 weeks later, under a full moon, in the same clearing where Eleanor had first shifted. The entire pack gathered, 200 wolves in human form, dressed in their finest clothes. Torches lit the perimeter, casting dancing shadows across the snow-covered ground. Eleanor wore a dress that Margaret had helped her make, simple white silk that flowed like water when she moved. Her dark hair was loose around her shoulders, threaded with winter flowers that Cass had insisted on. She felt beautiful. More than that, she felt powerful, ready. Marcus waited for her at the center of the clearing, wearing all black, his eyes glowing silver in the torchlight. Cass stood beside him as his second, while Margaret stood on the other side, ready to serve as Eleanor's sponsor. The pack formed a circle around them, their faces solemn and proud. An elder named Thomas, who'd served Marcus's father and grandfather before him, stepped forward to officiate. We gather tonight to witness the bonding of our alpha to his true mate. This is a sacred rite, one that will strengthen our pack and secure our future. Marcus Cade, do you accept Elena Morrison as your mate, your partner, your Luna? I do, Marcus said, his voice carrying across the clearing. In this life and whatever comes after. Elena Morrison, do you accept Marcus Cade as your mate, your partner, your alpha? Elena looked around at the gathered pack, at these people who'd welcomed her without reservation. Then she looked at Marcus, at the man who'd saved her from a slave auction and shown her a world she'd never imagined, who'd been patient and kind and gentle even when the bond between them must have been driving him crazy, who'd given her the choice to leave and celebrated when she chose to stay. I do, she said clearly, in this life and whatever comes after. Thomas smiled. Then by the power vested in me by this pack and the old laws that govern us, I declare you bonded. May your union be strong, may your love be eternal, and may you lead us with wisdom and courage. Marcus closed the distance between them in 2 strides, cupping Elena's face and kissing her deeply. The pack howled their approval, the sound rising to the moon above, and Elena howled with them, her wolf voice joining the chorus, claiming her place among these people who were now her family. The celebration that followed lasted until dawn. There was food and music and dancing, pack members taking turns congratulating them and welcoming Elena officially into their ranks. Young wolves asked her to tell them about the human world. Older wolves shared stories of previous alphas and their mates. Elena laughed and talked and felt more connected to these strangers than she'd ever felt to anyone in her old life. As the sky began to lighten, Marcus pulled her away from the party, leading her to a small overlook that provided a view of the entire territory. They stood there in comfortable silence, watching the sun rise over the mountains. Do you ever regret it? Marcus asked quietly. Accepting the bond, leaving your old life behind? Elena thought about the question seriously. Did she miss anything about her old life? The cramped apartment, the grueling factory work, the constant struggle to make ends meet, the loneliness that had been her constant companion. No, she said honestly. That life was just survival. This is living. Marcus pulled her close, and Elena rested her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. Her own personal melody, the rhythm that would guide her through the rest of her days. I have something for you, Marcus said after a moment. He pulled a small box from his pocket and opened it to reveal a ring. Not a diamond, but a moonstone that gleamed with an inner light. This belonged to my mother, and her mother before her. It's traditionally given to the Luna of the pack. Elena's eyes filled with tears as Marcus slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. It's beautiful. You're beautiful, Marcus corrected. The ring is just a symbol. They stood there until the sun was fully up, bathing the territory in golden light. Below them, the party was winding down, pack members heading to their homes to sleep off the night's celebrations. But Elena wasn't tired. She was energized, ready to begin this new chapter of her life. Come on, she said, tugging Marcus's hand. Show me more of our territory. I want to know every inch of it. Marcus laughed, the sound full of joy and love, as my Luna commands. They shifted together, 2 wolves running through the forest, and Elena knew she'd finally found where she belonged, not despite the mate mark, but because of it. That crescent moon on her chest had led her here, to this man, to this pack, to this life that was so much bigger and more beautiful than anything she'd dared to dream. She'd been sold for a coin, treated as worthless, discarded by a world that didn't see her value. But Marcus had seen it. The bond had seen it. And now, running through snow-covered trees with her mate by her side and a pack of 200 wolves who called her Luna, Elena finally saw it too. She was worth more than any coin. She was worth more than gold. She was a Luna, a wolf, a leader. She was loved and powerful and free, and she was exactly where she was meant to be. Over the following months, Elena grew into her role as Luna with a confidence that surprised even herself. She worked alongside Marcus to handle pack disputes, using her natural empathy and patience to find solutions that satisfied everyone involved. She organized childcare for the working wolves, ensuring no parent had to choose between providing for their family and spending time with their children. She even returned to her first love, sewing, creating a small workshop where she taught pack members to make their own clothes and repair damaged items. The territory flourished under their joint leadership. Young wolves grew strong and confident, older wolves found renewed purpose, and the pack as a whole became something special. Word spread to other territories, and soon alphas were coming from across the country to see how Marcus and Elena had built something so cohesive, so powerful. "You're changing the game," Cass told her one afternoon as they watched a group of young wolves training in the compound. "Other Lunas are taking notes. You're making them realize they can be more than just the alpha's partner. They can be leaders in their own right." Elena smiled, watching Marcus work with the trainees, correcting their form with patience and encouragement. "I'm just doing what feels right." "That's exactly what makes you special," Cass said. "You don't try to be something you're not. You just are. And it's exactly what this pack needed." That night, curled up in bed with Marcus, Elena reflected on how far she'd come. 6 months ago, she'd been standing on an auction block, worth nothing to anyone. Now she was a leader, a teacher, a mate, and a wolf. She'd found family, purpose, and a love that transcended anything she'd thought possible. "What are you thinking about?" Marcus murmured sleepily, pulling her closer. "How lucky I am," Elena said. "How grateful I am that you found me." "I'll always find you," Marcus said, pressing a kiss to her temple. "In this life and every life after. You're mine, Elena Morrison Cade, my mate, my Luna, my everything." "Gah, and you're mine," Elena whispered back, feeling the bond between them pulse with warmth and light. "Always." 2 years after the bonding ceremony, Elena stood in the same clearing where she'd first shifted, watching a young wolf named Sarah go through her first transformation. Marcus stood beside her, his hand warm in hers, as they guided the girl through the painful process of becoming what she was always meant to be. When Sarah finally stood on 4 legs, her coat a beautiful golden brown, she looked up at Elena and Marcus with wonder in her eyes. Elena smiled, remembering that feeling. The joy of discovering a part of yourself you never knew existed. "Welcome to your wolf," Elena said softly. "Now, let's teach you how to run." They spent the evening showing Sarah the territory, teaching her the boundaries and safe paths, letting her experience the freedom of the forest. And when they returned her to her grateful parents, Elena felt a sense of fulfillment that had nothing to do with the mate bond. This was her purpose, not just being Marcus's mate, but being a guide for others. Helping people discover their true selves, supporting them through transformations both literal and metaphorical. Building a pack where everyone felt valued, everyone felt seen, everyone felt home. That night, as she and Marcus prepared for bed, Elena caught sight of her reflection in the mirror. The mark on her chest gleamed faintly, a constant reminder of the destiny that had brought her here. She traced it with her finger, marveling at how something she'd barely noticed for most of her life had changed everything. "Still beautiful," Marcus said, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. "That mark. The moment I saw it, I knew I'd found you. I knew everything was going to be okay." Elena leaned back against him, covering his hands with her own. "Best coin you ever spent?" Marcus laughed low and warm. "Best anything I ever did. You're worth more than all the gold in the world, Luna. You're worth everything." And as Eleanor looked at their reflection in the mirror, Two people who'd been destined for each other, who'd found their way through darkness to light, who'd built something beautiful together. She knew he was right. She was worth everything. Not because of money or status or power, but because she was loved, because she belonged, because she was home. The mark on her chest pulsed with warmth, and Elena smiled. That crescent moon had been her compass, guiding her through the wilderness of her old life to this place of light and love and purpose. It had marked her as special long before she understood what that meant. They'd sold her for a coin, but Marcus had seen her worth, had recognized his mark on her skin, and had given her a life beyond her wildest dreams. He'd given her pack, family, love, and a destiny she was proud to claim, and every day for the rest of their lives she would wake up grateful for that mark, grateful for the bond, grateful for the man who'd searched for 5 years just to find her, grateful for the pack that had welcomed her without question, grateful for the second chance at life that most people never got. She was Eleanor Morrison Cade, Luna of the Silver Moon Pack, mate to Alpha Marcus, and she was exactly where she was meant to be.